On behalf of the Asiatic Society Kolkata, I welcome you all to this panel discussion on a much debated theme on printed books versus ebooks. I take this opportunity to bring to your attention that the Asiatic Society is the largest and oldest surviving publishing house in South Asia. I repeat, the oldest surviving publishing house in our country. For the last 232 years, the Asiatic Society is uninterruptedly publishing numerous titles under different series, particularly under Bibliotheca Indica series, which is still much cherished by the learned societies of India and abroad equally. Moreover, for the last 2 centuries, we are publishing our quarterly journal uninterruptedly, that is without any break of series. You must appreciate that it is a rare example of any academic institute to sustain its regularity in publication for centuries together. During the entire period of our history of publication, we had to adopt several changes from time to time, as and when required, to introduce new publishing methods compatible with the changing printing technologies, of course maintaining its tradition as far as possible. In the present pandemic situation, we have taken a few initiatives to publish our monthly bulletin and quarterly journal, introducing the digital mode of production. This has enabled us to reach out to the wider section of readers, but at the same time, the same readers who are accessing to e-version are inquiring for the print version as well. We now try to understand the various problems and prospects of both the e-version and printed version of our publication in the changing scenario. This is our primary object to organize this panel discussion. Total duration of the program will be 90 minutes, and this will be divided into 3 sessions. In the first session, we shall invite the much experienced senior professionals and get their overviews. The second session will cover the deliberations of the library professionals or of premier institutes of the city. And finally, in the third session, we are keen to listen to the young readers of undergraduate colleges who may be much more familiar to ebooks. Now, let me take the opportunity to invite Professor Shomik Bandyopadhyay, Sri B.N. Verma, and Professor Subhash Ranjan Chakraborty succeedingly to share their thoughts.
I'm a little disturbed and irritated over this debate over the printed book and the e-book. It needn't have become a debate, but maybe under the pressure of COVID-19 pandemic, it has come to the forefront and has turned into a debate and a contentious debate. I'm aware of the argument that e-books are easy to transmit, store, even quote-unquote read. But I'm not quite convinced over the primacy of the e-book over the printed book. I'm not going to sentimentalize over the touch of the book, the magic of the book, the sheer charm and aura of holding a book in your hand, feeling all the time that other people have touched it, shared it, read it, and are part of a tradition, part of a community. Even the making of the book, all the people and all the hands that have gone into the making of a single printed book, man and machines in wonderful collaborations. But let's leave all that aside and come back to the core question, as I see it, the ebook gives you a sense of the transitory, the momentary. You grab something, it reaches you fast, and you get it quick. Granted. I've also been told of the advantage of the ebook, where you get stuck in a word or a term, and you can immediately go back to the encyclopedia or the dictionary or the Google search and find out what it means and what it conveys. The quick solution, the quick fix. I'm aware of all these arguments, but where, in a print culture which has grown over the years, over a number of centuries, I should say, at least 4 centuries, what has happened, what has grown in the human sensibility is the connection with the book. Where when you read a book, you pause, you think, you stop at a point, and when you come back, you renew your reading a little earlier, and then carry on. And meantime, you've had the time to brood over it, even as you have been doing other things. So the thinking process, as a process, not as a quick fix, not as looking for a ready answer, that becomes a continuous happening. Books promote, sustain the thinking process. The other thing, you store the books, you collect the books, you create a library. A library situation is also, I consider, a thinking condition or a thinking space, where you take out one book, look at the next book, and handle it, go from one to the other, pause on one, reconnect with even yet another book. So this transmission of the reading, thinking continuity, that is something that the quick mechanics of the ebook does not allow you. The time, space, freedom that the book allows you a discursive movement. And this is what is most important in an endangered and contested democracy. And this is something that the ebook does not offer you straight away. The other thing, in the making of the human sensibility, making of the celebratory process itself, books have served a role. I can imagine a future where maybe a whole generation would be trained, tutored, nurtured in the ebook culture. And maybe they have a different sensitivity to words, to sentences. But with the book reading culture, we have developed a mindset, a way of moving from reading to thinking, coming back to reading, going back to thinking. that is already strongly set. From this strongly situated, historicized book reading culture, moving to or leaping to or jumping to an ebook culture may be just a disruption in a civilizational process. And that is what disturbs me and makes me question this whole debate of one versus the other. I'm quite prepared to accept the supplementary role of the ebook and the e-technology to a print book reading culture.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If the recent pandemic has taught us something, it is that we cannot be categorical about anything anymore. So, everything I am going to say is very tentative and subject to change as the world around us changes. If the question regarding the relevance and future of e-books or digital books over print books had been asked of me even 3 or 4 months ago, my answer probably would have been very different. I would have put my weight on the side of printed books, arguing that just as instant coffee had not been able to replace brewed coffee, and aficionados will invest huge amounts buying the best beans and percolators, so too real academics and book lovers will continue to buy print books even if it becomes a niche market. Today, however, I am not so certain. In the changed circumstances, e-books have acquired a currency they did not have earlier. A friend who had been a delegate with the Oxford University Press, New York, for many years remembers discussing this issue ad nauseum at their annual meeting of delegates and arriving at the position that it was not a question of one or the other, but of both, one and the other. However, today the balance seems to be shifting, which is not good news for hardcover book publishers like me. My wife says that in her days, doing a PhD was as much legwork as mind work. Chasing books and journals, she had visited just about every library in town, some even outside it, spending days traveling up and down. 10 years after she had submitted her thesis and fallen out of love with her subject, she was visiting Oxford. Sitting in front of a computer in a college library, she decided to renew her acquaintance with her old friend, her thesis. And within an afternoon, she says, she had covered the journey of 10 years and updated herself with all that happened in her field in that period. Such is the power of digital publishing. However, she still maintains that the books she loves and cherishes, those that she would like to go back to again and again, ones she likes to possess, to hold in her hand, to display on her bookshelf, would be print books. The experience of reading an e-book, of course, varies from format to format and from purpose to purpose. Reading on a smartphone is just not the same as reading on a tablet, or reading on a laptop, or computer for that matter. Also, tablets like the iPad and Kindle have their own platforms or systems, and you have to first master these before you can launch yourself as an e-book reader. So, while the computer-savvy generation might find it easier to navigate these devices, those of us who belong to the older generation find it difficult to make optimum use of them. So at one level, it is also a generational thing. More importantly, digital books have in a profound way altered the relationship between readers and books and publishers, and writers and publishers. To begin with, because digital books are so easy and cheap to produce, a lot of rubbish gets published. There are hardly any quality controls, and only the most reputed and stringent publishers bother to get a manuscript evaluated before they decide to print it, digitally or otherwise. Today, anyone who fancies himself or herself as a writer can get published on the internet by paying an enormous publisher a small sum of money, which is not to say that such type of publishing did not happen earlier in the print format, but it was on a much smaller scale and certainly not everyone could afford it. Because writers now submit their manuscripts electronically, many publishers, particularly journal publishers who have almost exclusively gone online, do not bother to edit or apply a house style to the books or papers submitted. That job is now in the domain of authors. Authors are expected to submit a print-ready copy, and we know that few writers are capable of actually editing and stylistically formatting their work, which is an elaborate exercise and requires special skill. Writers tend to concentrate on the content of their book or papers, not on style and layout, so what we are getting to read today are books without aesthetic and stylistic worth. The editors of most of these journals are themselves largely academics, and so their emphasis is again on content, not on aesthetics. Also, there used to be a sense of responsibility to the matter one put out in the public domain. In today's interactive world, we do not know where our information on the internet comes from, and we cannot be sure of its authenticity. To be sure, there were disadvantages to the earlier system of knowledge production as it concentrated power into a few hands. But today's free-for-all has gone into the very opposite direction, to allow anyone with an opinion to put it out there with or without supporting facts. Most ebook platforms like Kindle and Apple tablets concentrate on popular books that you read once and forget about afterwards. Even the shelf life of academic books or classics, and I mean their life on my shelf, not their saleability, is limited because earlier either the book has been licensed to me for a limited period, or because the life of my Kindle or a tablet is limited. And as newer versions of these devices appear, my older device becomes outdated and therefore unviable. Ergo, the book I downloaded on my device also disappears. Earlier, if I bought a book, it stayed with me for either my lifetime or the book's lifetime. That is, before I gave it away or allowed the dog to chew it or left it out in the rain. In all other conditions, it was mine for life. A digital book makes no such promise. Once upon a time, art in general and the written word in particular was our guarantee of immortality, our response to the power of time to wipe us out of existence. Today, the written word has itself become ephemeral. This limited life of the written word is most evident in newspapers and magazines, which always had a limited value to begin with. However, ever since these have gone online, they have become even more ephemeral and transient. While once People would make cuttings from newspapers and magazines and preserve them in scrapbooks. Today we click on an article, and once we have read it, we delete it. Gone forever. So also seems to be the fate of much publicized online works. Once upon a time, books lovingly written and beautifully illustrated were the pride of civilizations and were guarded as precious commodity. Libraries and the number of books they contained defined the culture and creativity of a people. Today, books disappear into thin air a few years after they are produced. And my biggest fear is that this will ultimately impact the ways on which we receive information, power, education, and disperse and store knowledge. If there are no permanent books, our knowledge too becomes transitory, as much research has become today. Libraries and universities, and increasingly faculty members, are turning towards digital book as they are easier and cheaper to prepare and procure for students. As more and more courses are offered digitally, both students and teachers rely more on content available online. Many libraries across the world have started to invest in ebook technology by removing old bookshelves and bringing new technology. So, students use ebooks for their studies. This trend has had an impact on many issues regarding the publishing industry and the way people use books. Libraries organize them, and all the logistics regarding library service and publishers or bookstores' business. Even so, here is the opinion of a professor regarding ebooks versus print books, and I quote, "It is highly unfortunate to regard licensing an ebook as the equivalent of buying a hard copy of a book. I would always advise colleagues to try to get the library to buy a hard copy of a book. Why? Because that means we will not lose the license of the book. It seems to me to be very short-sighted of libraries to focus only on digital licenses, as it means that the kind of major world-class collections which many universities sell as a key point in their identity will never be created. But things have changed rapidly in the last few years. The largest information technology companies such as Apple, Dell, Samsung, Amazon, among many others, are in the midst of a war to invent, produce, promote, and sell latest products that will become the future platforms for people to obtain information and knowledge. It appears that the principal aim is to make customers read more from portable gadgets rather than printed books. So the question really is, does one have to win? Do we have to choose between e-books and print books? We cannot turn the clock back, and as technology changes the way we shape and content of our lives, we must learn to use both for their particular strengths. The issue is not to have winners and losers, but to understand and utilize the impact each one will have on the other as they evolve, and the way the book industry reacts to the reader's feedback. Thank you.
Namaskar. I'm totally unsure about my competence to comment either on the possibility of a bright future of ebooks or on the pessimistic prognosis about the future of the books as we have always known them. I'm not a historian of the book, nor do I have a professional or technical expertise about the production of either the ebook or the printed one. Yet, books are so much a part of our quotidian existence, I thought perhaps I can say something of my personal relationship to books. I'm neither a voracious reader nor quite a discerning one, but I do read and have my preferences. If one mentions a book, the image for me is that of a printed book. Before one reads the book, one likes to feel it. A new book has its own kind of smell and a fresh look. One savors that, sometimes liking what one sees, sometimes not. Often, at the first sight, a love story starts. The book communicates a personality of its own. One may not like it, one may like it. Even old books, not to speak of rare books, have a charm of their own. A book is rare if the book is well preserved. But even when one finds an old classic in the typical College Street style of yellow-covered, hardbound volume, with the name of the book and that of the author inscribed on the cover in Chinese ink, it is still considered a rare fortune and one values its possession. This has been the usual story till very recently. The arrival of the e-book is believed to have changed this. The scale of change is probably not very large yet. I have not looked at any statistics though. Whatever I say is purely a guess. When did I first experience the e-book? I believe I found digitized and PDF versions of books on the net. These are essentially books found in the virtual space, legitimately or not. I once heard a lecture on digital humanities, and the learned lecturer told us that millions of books have indeed been digitized and are accessible. But these are old printed books which have been digitized and stored in the virtual space for the use of the readers. These are not proper e-books in the sense they were not produced as e-books. Producing, marketing, and selling e-books is a commercial proposition and requires elaborate organization, capital, and technical expertise to produce and sell them. I think I became aware of them when publishers advertised new books indicating that e-books are available. One also saw CDs attached to these books. Did they come in CDs? At least that is what I thought. I may be entirely wrong in saying this. But the introduction of the Kindle probably revolutionized the e-book by making it available on a relatively mass scale. One could use it to buy books and build up a virtual library. I never bought an e-book before I had a Kindle as a gift. In New York, a friend of my son, mellowed by a bit of beer probably, insisted that I and my wife, accept the gift of a Kindle which she received free from Amazon. I was not sure if I would be able to handle it, but I was curious, and I did not require any persuasion. He gave the Kindle to us, but my son had it registered in his own name, saying that all I had to do is to send him the requests and he will buy for us. I didn't quite feel that I needed those books. I did read the free books which came with the reader and read some of them. There were some crime thrillers which I loved to read, mostly by American writers. I read Lee Child's and a few others who were not very familiar, or who had not been very familiar to me at least. What I found extremely useful were a few free dictionaries in the Kindle. These included Oxford dictionaries in English, French, German, and some other European languages. There is even a Hindi dictionary. But I really got hooked onto the little contraption when a former student and colleague transferred from her collection a number of books including crime literature by authors I have read before and I liked immensely. There was also a new book by Murakami, Killing Commendator. The isolation in which we live now underscores the value and the usefulness of the ebook, and a reader. I have procured a few books recently, including the collected works of P.G. Wodehouse, about 800 pages, for a bare $2, and one in a new series introducing a Swedish detective, Mr. Vorg, by Alexander McCall Smith. These have served me well in the last few days of relative isolation. Thus, the use and function of the ebook is not in question. The aesthetic pleasure of reading, however, is. Reading on the Kindle tends to be monotonous. You cannot move forward and backward, or at least I do not know how to maneuver the Kindle to achieve this. You also cannot distinguish one book from the other. An academic book or a fiction all look the same. You just see the illuminated screen, soothing on the eye, but more and a little dull on the mind. But it is, on the other hand, very convenient. You can read it in any position, standing, sitting, reclining, or supine. You can even read it during a power cut. The book, as we have known it all the time, has its own unique world. Now you may order a book online, and at the moment that seems to be the only alternative. But books are not conceivable without the bookshops, which store them, sell them, and generally make them available to the readers. At least that was the situation till the online deliveries and e-commerce had become a very large part of our existence in the world today. One recalls with pleasure the Signet bookshop on Workip Street. My earliest experience was in late 1950s and through the 60s and 70s till the 90s, I believe, when the shop had certainly become only a shadow of its glorious past. The books were very imaginatively and artistically displayed, and one could ask to see and feel the books. That is very important. The first shop where we were able to browse on the College Street, as far as my experience goes, was the huge showroom of the Rupa and Company in the second floor of the building which houses the coffee house. The building was known as the Albert Hall building at one time. I recall with pleasure collecting every month the free Penguin newsletter from the shop and read about the new issues. The shop had Penguin books, and some of these paperbacks were affordable. In 1965 or 1966 came the Monisha bookshop beside the Mohammadi Society Hall on the College Street. Here also one could move around, browse, and even manage to sit on a stool and read. The showroom of the Orient Longman, now Orient Black Swan, used to have a good stock of Penguins, then apart from their own publications. Here also one could move around the bookshelves and browse. Then there was the quaint little foreign publishers agency, a small shop on the Grand Hotel Arcade. Topon Chatterjee was for a long time almost synonymous with the shop. This was a great favorite of the intellectuals of the city in the 1960s, 70s and 80s. Topon later shifted to the Sigal bookstore when it was started in the mid-1990s in Bhavanipur. This provided for some time a great browsing experience in the city. They had a huge collection of academic books, particularly in the social sciences, but an upper story had popular books as well. I got my first Colin Dexter's featuring the one and only Inspector Morse from the shop. Thus, bookstores are closely associated with any narrative about books and surely about the romance around the books. A few years back, I discovered in New York the Mysterious Bookshop, featuring only crime books and thrillers. A huge hall was full of these books. On one side, a door had a yellow tape across its front with a signboard of crime scene to create the atmosphere. This was indeed a very exceptional experience for us. I talk of bookshops because the e-books are usually exchanged in a virtual space. It would be remiss of me if I do not mention Ashok Babu and his family bookshop situated in the ground floor of the new building of the Asiatic Society. He's always there to get books for us. One only had to tell him the name of the publisher in case he did not know that. And I must also mention the handsome discount he always so generously grants. Bookshops and the managers, owners, employees, and the readers constitute the world in which we associate with books. This world was predicated on a very personal bond among the sellers and the readers, buyers. Famous and or favorite bookshops abound in all the big cities and towns of various sizes all over the world. This is how the book and the readers grew from the time of the printing revolution. This is substantially different from the world of e-books. I'm inclined to feel that we are witnessing a period of significant transition like the one which was witnessed during the transition from the manuscript to the printed book. Lucia Fabre and Henri Martin, as indeed all other historians of the book, tell us about the fairly large and organized market of manuscript books. These were gradually captured by the printed book. Indeed, the printed book tended to copy the manuscripts with ornate types, illumination, etc. Even in the mid-15th century, it was not easy to predict what the invention of printing would eventually lead to. One feels that such a tension is being witnessed today. The e-book, I talk of the legal business, not the plagiarized digital versions, is seen as a challenge to the printed book. The young today are comfortable with electronic gadgets. My granddaughter, possibly from the age of 3, was glued to a tablet to watch cartoons, etc. She handled books, but had books read to her. She is possibly attached more to the tablet now when she is 9, but she also reads books. She seems to be fond of some of them at least. Yet, her generation will, for all we know, find the e-books as given as we found the printed book as given. But I feel this belongs to the relatively distant future, unless the present situation completely transforms human society. I read in The Guardian in early July that in London the booksellers reported a sale of 3.8 million books in June compared to 3.1 million in June last year. This should boost the morale of the publishers and provide comfort to those who swear by the traditional book. In the meantime, I consider myself happy and fortunate to straddle two worlds, if not always with equanimity. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Shomik Bandyopadhyay, Sri B.N. Bhama, and Professor Subhash Ranjan Chakraborty for sharing your varied experiences. I now invite Dr. Nivedita Ganguly to coordinate the second session.
Welcome to you all. I am Dr. Nivedita Ganguly, coordinator of this session, this online discussion on print books versus e-books. We are starting the second session now on the views of librarians on print journals versus online journals. The 21st century has brought about a massive change in the attitude of people, where we are inclined towards ebooks and journals rather than books and journals in printed versions. Reading without an electronic device is deemed unimaginable by today's generation. There is a Kindle, an iPad, or a tablet in almost every reader's hands nowadays. However, no matter the progress in technology, holding a book is more than an act of reading. It is a sentiment and emotion. Mature readers with years of practice of having a book in their hands often have a hard time consoling themselves online versions of books. Readers remember books and journals by how they look. Readers retain the information that print pages contain by simply taking a look at the cover page or even the binder. Such is the power of books in all their glory. Today we have with us Dr. Chandra, Chief Librarian of Indian Statistical Institute, Kolkata, and Dr. Narayan Chandra Khosh, Chief Librarian of Indian Institute of Management, IIMC, Kolkata. They are going to delve into the constant tug and war between print and online books and journals, and we are going to discuss the various pros and cons of both versions of literature and information. Our first speaker is Dr. Chandra. Dr. Shatpathy is currently the Chief Librarian at Indian Statistical Institute, Kolkata, and in charge PCM Memorial Museum and Archive, Kolkata. He has over 22 years of professional experience. Earlier, he worked as a librarian and coordinator and in the learning project of National Institute of Technology, Silchar. He was a librarian and in media relation at Indian Institute of Management, Indore, and also served as Punjabi University, Patiala, CE Ahmedabad, CMTR Chandigarh in various capacities. Besides, he was the coordinator, Center for Educational Technology and Continuing Education Cell, NIT Silchar, during 2001 to 2004. Dr. Shatpathy has published more than 40 papers and edited number of books and conference proceedings. He organized number of conferences and workshops. He was also associated with SHARP, UNESCO, World Bank, MHRD of Government of India in different projects. Our second speaker is Dr. Narayan Chandra Khosh, Chief Librarian of Indian Institute of Management, Kolkata. He has 25 years long professional experience in various organizations like British Council Library, Kolkata, American Library, Eastern Institute of Integrated Learning and Management, Army Institute of Management, Kolkata, CSIR, Indian Institute of Chemical Biology, National Institute of Pharmaceutical Education and Research, Kolkata. Presently, he has been serving IIM Calcutta as a librarian. He has successfully organized many national level seminar, workshops, imparted training programs. He has served as a member of the Library Advisory Committee in many reputed organizations. He edited 2 books and published a good number of research articles. He delivered invited lectures in various seminars, symposia, conferences. He is also associated with the University of Calcutta, University of Kolkata, Netaji Subhash Open University, Indira Gandhi National Open University as a guest teacher of Library and Information Science Department. Now, I invite our 2 speakers, Dr. Shatpathy and Dr. Khosh, to deliver their lectures in this online discussion.
Namaskar. First of all, let me thank the Asiatic Society for organizing this online panel discussion on the print journals versus online journals. I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Ramakrishna Chatterjee and Dr. Nivedita Ganguly of Asiatic Society for inviting me to share my experience on this platform. Friends, we are going through a very critical and difficult period of time due to COVID-19. It is unprecedentedly affecting our society. The library information centers are not immune to it. What is affecting the world is affecting our library information centers. Most of our libraries are now closed. They are serving online format only. Only few libraries are opened and they are responding to this crisis in a unique way. The standard operating procedure for library information centers are now operational. Therefore, a number of books and print journals are under quarantine. Thus, this situation is forcing the library information centers to move closer to the electronic format from the print format. Therefore, at this juncture, the today's discussion on print versus electronic journals becomes much more pertinent. Also, the advances in digital technology have brought radical changes in the way information is created, stored, organized, accessed, retrieved, and consumed. It has a deep impact on scholarly communication. The most striking things in the library these days is the changing nature of library resources. There has been a paradigm shift in the collection of resources, that is from print format to electronic format. Further, today's young and tech-savvy generation are looking for electronic resources than print resources, yet it is convenient for them to use. Coming to the point of our discussion, electronic journals are the electronic equivalent of paper journals or magazines. In many cases, electronic journals provide access to full text version of articles that you can read on the screen, or you can take a printout, or you can save in different mediums. Electronic journals come in various different formats. One of such is full text. In the full text e-journal, the complete text of articles in a journal are available online. Second, partial full text, where only selected articles are available as full text and not entire journal. There are some journals which are electronic only journals. That means there is no paper version of this type of journals are published. It is available or can be accessed online only. Electronic journals are available in the HTML format or PDF version. These days, people are trying to integrate multimedia component to it. Now coming to the point, why one should prefer electronic journals over print journals. If you look from the library point of view, it helps in saving the self-storage space. That means a huge space earlier taken by the print journals are now free, so that library can use these spaces for other innovative library services. Further, there is no concern about theft or mutilation. Accessibility from outside the library through off-campus access mechanism is another added advantage. That means the users are no more required to come to the library physically to access the journals. Further, the simultaneous use by more than one patron is possible in case of electronic journals, where in print journal that is not possible. Also, the discovery services like serial summons, EBSCO discovery service or Primo can lead you to search across various resources or various publishers' resources in a particular place. That gives you the desired searches. Through negotiations and big deals with the publishers, library can have value for money. If you look from the researcher point of view, it is a big source for getting up-to-date and quick information. Because earlier in the printed journals, the time taken for processing and publishing was very large. Also, the value-added features like ability to search across or cross-linking of whole collection of e-journals or to other databases are possible. Mobile access to the e-journals is another key point which drives researchers towards these e-journals. Now let us talk about some of the challenges that we face in e-journals. E-journals heavily rely on electricity, hardware, software and connectivity. And a number of libraries, especially libraries located in rural areas, are having problems with all these components. A large country like India cannot afford to provide all these components to all the libraries. And there are certain unresolved copyright issues related to the e-journals. Also, the lack of uniform pricing and licensing policy is another major hindrance in the way of e-journals. Question of permanent archiving of electronic journals is a big challenge because most of the libraries cannot afford to have their own electronic archives for these journals. More standardization is required in terms of purchase models, the formats and the way that we access electronic journals. Also, availability of electronic journals in regional languages is a major issue in a multilingual country like India. Therefore, the collaboration between various vendors, publishers, LIS developers, and specifically libraries is needed to explore the best practices, workflows, and business models. New developments that are having a high impact in today's scholarly communication and the publication industry is the open access movement. These days, a significant portion of academic community wants that the informations should be free to all. That means all the electronic journals should be available under free access or open access. Thus, the open access movement is growing. The open access is the process by which academic research or scholarly content is made available freely and permanently to everyone in any way to read and build upon. In this case, the authors or institute pay to publish rather than the users paying to read it. But the major issue in this movement is the article processing charges, as they are very high and researchers are feeling pinch of it. Plan S may come to their rescue, but in a country like India, it is still remains a distance breed. Another major issue in the open access movement is the mushroom growth of predatory journals. Open access itself is a valid business model under which legitimate journals can publish articles, but it is also a model through which predatory journals can generate revenue from the unsuspecting authors. The author is asked to submit a paper and then, following questionable or non-existent peer review process, the contributor is asked to pay hefty APC charges to publish their papers. Therefore, this is becoming a major concern in the open access movement. India is one of the major contributors to such kind of journals. Therefore, government should take initiatives to curb this kind of predatory journals for the sake of research. The range of electronic resources is huge and growing. E-journals are here to stay and they are the future. It will become more popular with the addition of multimedia interaction and multimedia component to it. Such kind of multimedia journals are now called video journals. Job Video Journals is one such example. But more and more stress nowadays are given on open access journals for scholarly communication. To conclude, I would like to say that having e-journals doesn't mean that print journals have become less valuable than earlier they used to be. Rather, it is just a change in the perception, a change in the mindset, and change in the mode of use in terms of technological interventions. The fragrance of newly printed journals was there, is there, and will always be there. So, thank you.
Hi friends, I am indebted to the Asiatic Society for giving me this opportunity to express my views on print journal versus online journals in the panel discussions today on print books versus ebook, which is really need of the hour. Friends, all of you are aware that due to this unprecedented pandemic situation, we all are passing through very critical times. This has impacted the life of entire human race worldwide. Sometimes it feels like everything is at a standstill due to the prolonged period of lockdown. And the libraries are no exception to it. But we always try to find better means to fight against all evils, and the history is the witness to it. In our country, all the academic institutions from kindergarten to the institutions of higher learning are closed. So the libraries attached to it are beyond access to their users. So what is then? Have we been stopped giving access to our library? Of course no. Because our libraries are now reached to our users through the remote access. Either we have been giving the access to our user through virtual private network or through Shibboleth technologies, Open Athens, or third-party IP connections like service providers like AJ Proxy, like IRS, or maybe remote access. So now, let me start my discussion keeping in view the present situation. So the print journal, as you know, that it's any journal that is available in printed form only. It has physical existence. You can hold it, you can touch it, you can turn the pages, and like any other magazine, you can read it anywhere, in the library, in your bedroom, in your drawing room. But at the same time, the e-journals, where the articles are available in full text online only. This may have features, many more features compared to the print journals, such as a link to other articles, keywords, interactive citations, and the options to download as PDF. And if you just have a look, there is no basic difference in the PDF and the printed article as it appears. Sometimes the online journals, they published in HTML versions also. Apart from that, it has the additional features like the easy and very compatible retrieval facilities of the articles of your need. just by searching keyword or by the title. You can get the right content immediately. What is your need? But many of the occasions you will find that some journals are available in both in print as well as online mode. But in both the cases, the content is same. Only difference is the format. Sometimes e-journal publisher put extra content, extra features, compared to the print versions. Now, as I told sometimes back, that all the users are accessing the libraries, accessing the literature remotely off campus, So this is the preconditions that the content should be available in electronic mode only. Otherwise, it's very difficult to get access from the remote location. So that way, e-journals is the only option, only solutions, along with all the additional features. And now, in the present situation, as I told, that all the Institute of Higher Educations physically closed, they are offering courses online. Even my organizations like Indian Institute of Management Calcutta, they are offering the online courses in different learning management softwares. So as the library also used and accessed remotely off campus, sometimes the faculty needs to integrate some electronic contents, some published literature in the journals with the course curriculum and pedagogy as a teaching material or learning material, study material So if you want to do that, of course, a print journal is not the solution for that. We need to have the subscription to the e-journal only. E-journal is very proactive in nature. As the feature like topical displays, recommended readings, public list, etc. also available. So just if you consider, the today's need and the future, what I foresee that even in hybrid nature of libraries like us, where we are having a lot of printed journals in our collection, bound volumes in our collections, we also think twice, how to give access to our archival collection, which is available in bound volumes. So of course, not only the current subscription, considering the today's need, we have to think of subscribing the archives of printed journals so that the user can get access to that also remotely. And but I believe that today's situation is forcing us to change our concept, to think, to look beyond the traditional library, and where the e-content is the only solution. So no more print journals, the e-journals or online journals is the new normal. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shakpati. Thank you, Dr. Narayan Khosh, for your beautiful and mind-blowing talks on this topic. In fact, we are often caught between the struggle of having physical books and journals before us, helping us take notes underline important points, physically bookmark them, which in turn helps us retain an amazing number of information that can be recalled by our brains through the memory of the colors, smell, feeling of the printed books. But with the pros of having printed books and journals come the cons. As you all know, there is nothing called buying too many books and journals. We often tend to buy books and hoard them. Any researcher's office or residence is likely to be covered under layers of papers, books, journals, and articles. Any voracious reader identifies themselves with the surrounding literature and information in their place of residence or office. We as readers love them, read them, remember them till their pages turn yellow, and we repeat. This emotion, like every relationship, comes with its own baggage space. How many times have you thought, why do we keep this book? Why do we store this interesting bunch of journals from early 1990s or of the journals of 1784 and beyond? Keeping with these times, where information is unlimited but space is limited, technology has showed us the path of resolution. It gave us the cloud. Technology showed us we could save paper and space, and thereby we can save our environment. And it showed us how easy it was for readers to refer to multiple books, journals, articles at the same time without having to undergo the physical labor that comes with print books and journals. Using of journal databases are the lifeline of researchers in science and technology. Easy cross-referencing, citation analysis are the core areas of e-publications. Imagine having access to thousands of articles with innumerable information throughout the world at the tap of a finger that technology provides. Now imagine sitting for hours around thousands of books and journals and still not having access to such kind of information that technology can now provide us. Both versions come with their pros and cons, and my opinion, there is a point of balance that is to be maintained. Thank you all for watching this and hope that you have loved this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nivedita Ganguly, Dr. Narayan Khosh, and Dr. Kishore Satpathy for sharing your experiences as library professionals in the context of the use of print journals versus e-journals. I now invite Urja Priyadarshini Chaudhary to coordinate the third and final session, which will be represented by young readers of undergraduate colleges.
Hello. On behalf of the Asiatic Society, I would like to welcome you all to the third session of this panel discussion. I'm Urja Priyadarshini Chaudhary and I'm going to be facilitating this discussion today. I'd just like to begin by talking about the generation that I belong to. Now, I call it the intermediate generation because although we weren't born with technology, we were introduced to it at a very early stage, at around the age of 9 or 10, and hence we've grown up with it, or while being surrounded by it. And I think this is probably one of the reasons why I'm so equally comfortable and uncomfortable with the prospect of technology, of new technology especially. And I think this has transferred on to my dilemma regarding the print book and the ebook. Although I have realized, noted rather, that I tend to reach out for the print book more often than I do for the ebook. And there's of course a variety of reasons for that, but I think most importantly it's because nothing can really replace the feel of a hard copy print book in your hands. or neither can it replace the experience of actually walking into a bookstore and purchasing a book. There's also, of course, other personal reasons. For example, my parents and my grandparents always write these little notes or inscriptions in the beginning pages of the books that they give to me. And they obviously automatically assign a sentimental value to these books, and I still have them with me to this day, and I can revisit them at any point in time. And this is just something that is not possible in the case of ebooks. However, I also do realize that ebooks, the print books, the appeal of the print book is more nostalgic than practical. Because recently I found out the number of trees that need to be chopped on a regular basis for the production and dissemination of these print books to be made possible. And the rate and numbers are alarmingly high. And because I've always been someone who cares very deeply about the environment, this has been a very serious consideration for me. Ebooks, on the other hand, do form an extremely viable alternative, and they do have numerous other benefits. For example, they help us save on space, and they help us save on money, because of course ebooks do tend to be less expensive than their print alternatives. And there's also, of course, the reason that they're extremely portable, and we can carry as many books as we want in one single Kindle tablet. And you don't really even need Kindle these days, because you can easily download and access these books on your phone, and there are applications made for this purpose. For example, there's this app called the Any Books, which allows you to pay a monthly subscription, and it gives you access to a vast digital library, which I think is great, and hence makes me believe that ebooks are definitely the future and the way forward for us. And we can tell by how the newer generations are more and more comfortable with the prospect of this new technology. But I also do realize that this might come as a threat to the publishing industry. However, I do not believe that it needs to be. I think the publishing community needs to evolve in such a way so as to accommodate themselves in this changing framework. Because books are going to be there forever, and nothing is ever going to change that. And I think when it comes down to it, I still believe that this debate about ebooks or print books, it's still personal preference. And I'd just like to end my thoughts here, and I am going to invite my friends Achal Singh Chauhan, Armeen Haq, and Prithvi Banerjee to share their thoughts on the same. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anchal, and I've been a reader since about the age of 4 or 5, and I absolutely love books and I love collecting them. So I feel that in the debate of print books versus digital books, I personally would always prefer having a physical copy of a book as compared to maybe having a digital copy, say on a Kindle. So there are a couple of reasons why I would always want a print book. Now the first reason would be, I feel something that any other lifelong reader will tell you. They just love having the feel of a book in their hands. And that goes for me as well. I feel like I really get immersed into the book if I have a physical copy in front of me as compared to, say, reading on a Kindle. And there is another sense of achievement as you turn the pages, as you're going through the story, and when you finally reach the end of the novel. Another reason would be, I feel that my attention span when it comes to digital books is quite limited. But if I have a novel with me, a physical copy, I feel like I could sit and read for hours and hours on end. Now, the last reason would be that, say, when it comes to studying, I feel having a textbook in front of me is a much convenient option, because it really helps me understand the material and grasp the material as compared to maybe browsing through the PDF of a textbook. Now, this is one side of the debate, and while I feel that things are not going to change anytime for me soon, I'll still be collecting books and reading print books. I do feel there are a few reasons as to why I might consider switching to digital books, maybe owning a Kindle and having my entire library of books there. The first would probably be cost. Now, why I say that this is the first reason is because I feel like there's a new bestseller every other day, and I feel like I really must have that book. So for me, the cost would really be cut down if I decided to buy the e-version of the books as compared to maybe buying the print version of the books. Another reason would be storage. So I don't really have a lot of space right now, and that's always been the case. I've always had to adjust my books here and there on my shelves. So I feel that would be another reason to consider, maybe at a later date, not entirely now. But I feel that yes, having to put the books someplace, you always need to find some space to put them, and it's not exactly convenient to have so many novels and so many other books. So yeah, I think these would be the two reasons, and I hope I've shed some light on the entire debate and what goes on through the mind of a person who's been reading for so long. But I think to conclude, I would say for the time being, I would stick to having print books as compared to digital books. And maybe sometime in the future that may or may not change. Thank you.
While the debate between physical books and e-books has been an ongoing debate where one side always keeps marking its superiority to the other, I would not prefer to put either of them on a hierarchy. I think both of them are equally important, if not more, but for different functions. Like, I would kind of say that a certain category of books is beneficial for a certain audience, for a certain time, and for a certain function, and instead of saying that as a whole one form of book is better than the other. So here's why I think that ebooks are not really preferred now, because number one, according to me, number one reason why I wouldn't prefer ebooks is because I am myopic, so I cannot really look at or stare at the screen for a very long time without straining my eyes. And since a lot of our classes have been online and a lot of our resources have been digital, I've recently felt the strain that has kind of like building up, the pressure that has been building up on my eyes, and the kind of toll it is taking on me. I have had to increase my medication and my dosages because of that, and I also have to use like a lubricator for my eyes every day because I cannot stare at the screen without getting dry eyes. So I think one of the biggest concerns about ebooks is their harmful effects on our physical health, and in a situation where we have where we are being more and more health conscious, it becomes even more important debate to kind of consider whether ebooks are actually that beneficial or not. However, when we talk about accessibility, ebooks beat printable books because you can access an ebook from whatever part of the world and on whatever device you want to, as compared to carrying the physical book with you everywhere. However, the feel of carrying the book with you everywhere is completely different, and it kind of becomes special because the materiality and the embodiment of the book itself becomes an embodiment of your memories with that book, your connection with that book. It becomes a marker of a particular time period in your life when you were engaging with that book, and therefore it becomes more special to you. So I think physical books have like that intrinsic connection that you can't really build with ebooks. I feel for academic purposes, for distribution purposes, as in mass distribution, public distribution, ebooks are a good alternative. I think for archiving, ebooks are great because you can not go wrong with digital. Like, you can compact a lot of resources and a lot of texts in one small pen drive or in one small link. So imagine the amount of data and information we can have with just the facility of digitizing our resources. But at the same time, would we want to completely do away with print books, is the question. And the answer to that is maybe not, because honestly the texture and the feel and the entire experience of reading or of having a material book is completely different, and it's so wholesome that I don't think it's going to be that easy for ebooks to replace material printed books. So in my opinion, both ebooks and print books are important. It's just that their functions are very different, and it completely depends on what purpose you're using the books for. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Prithvi Banerjee. I'm an MBBS student from IQCT Medical College and Narayan Multispeciality Hospital. The current topic under scrutiny, that of ebooks versus printed books, brings forth a series of areas of discussion, which, even though not new, are important enough to be reiterated to the avid readers. Now, I myself have always been enthralled by the magic of printed books, and am hence heavily biased towards them being absolutely irreplaceable. The first counter argument an ebook reader would actually cite is that of easy accessibility. Now, that is ironic in itself, because ebooks, as the name suggests, heavily depends on the availability of internet connection. Now, while that might be a basic necessity for you and me, it remains to be an extended and an unimaginable luxury for a major population of our country, especially the suburban and the village populations. Even if I ignore that, and you tell me that I belong to an era of, Thala Rickshaws Calcutta. I love to travel long. I love to profusely perspirate, go to a distant library in search of a particular volume of a book. And if I fail to get the same, I am utterly disappointed. Well, that's true, but it also brings forth a second school of thought. If I do happen to find the volume, the satisfaction that I receive is unmatched, unparalleled, juxtaposed to that of an ebook reader who has got to do nothing to procure the same. The rest of my argument might seem to be based on a very abstract and a romantic baseline. But it's important because when you consider the consumer preference at large, these two parameters are primary. First of all, I have never seen an ebook reader rave about an ebook smell, but always the opposite. I have always seen focus being more oriented towards physical books because they are devoid of any distraction. That brings me to a point of emotional connect. In physical books, you are connected to a real object than the digital wind. And I'll link this to something called mental mapping. Mental mapping is when you allocate particular information as and when they are processed to you in particular areas of your mind. And how that's done is directly dependent upon the physical illustrations as presented to you. And if they are presented to you by a three-dimensional object with the height, width and breadth before you, you're able to trace the whole path of the map. You're able to understand the whole course of the argument, as juxtaposed to that of an ebook where you're presented with merely independent segmented snippets of a text and are hence unable to comprehend the whole text as one. I also never understood how you can own an ebook, because the ownership primarily lies in the digital library and you lose your possession as soon as you switch over to another device. Whereas in physical books, you not only own it, you can even personalize it by writing your name in the front page of the book, and that remains your book forever. uniquely, differently from all other copies of that book in the world. Also, coming to the prototypic health hazard of eye hazards, that the strain on the eye, even if the counterparts of ebook supporters might say that they have switched over to no glare or low light intensities, that again fails to work as soon as you go out in the open. That fails to work in sunlight and hence dissociates you from nature. I also never understood how money flows, but I understand the basics of economy and how multiple people are employed in several grades and stages in the printing book industry. And I cannot imagine waking up one fine day in a world where College Street, Asia's largest book market, does not exist. Hence, to conclude, I would like to state that let the technology in this context be limited to the professionals and the experience to the personals.